Wow, what a busy week it has been. I mean, we have had tons of different impacts across the United States in terms of power outages, in terms of big time snowfall amounts, in terms of severe weather that did perform and produce strong tornadoes, and then also severe weather that kind of fell apart and didn't really do much. But yeah, in this video, we're going to be going over the forecast for this new snowstorm in the southeast. It's going to be coming in. It's actually going to drop a decent amount of snow totals, and it could potentially shut some of these areas down with closures. Might have to put a southeast southeast is closed sign up. But yeah. Anyways, first, what we're gonna do though is go over some of the impacts that are happening right now across the United States. 102,000 people without power here in Wisconsin. That is due to those blizzard-like conditions. There, we're also getting big-time snowfall amounts up there, and also over here in Michigan, you're starting to get those big-time snowfall amounts starting to accumulate there with 150,000 people now without power there too. We got some power outages over here in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, but all three states kind of sitting around the same amount, around 20,000 people. Coming over to here, we do have a large swath here of some bigger snow going into Wisconsin, about 6 to 5 inches right there near two rivers, and then going all the way through, we're talking about 12, 14, 10 inches in this yellow and orange strip, making it all the way into Nebraska, with some areas there getting up to 10 inches as well. And on top of that, we're getting those blizzard-like conditions. And over here in Michigan, snowstorm still isn't over. It's going to last for a little while. And your guys' accumulation is yet to come, but it's about to start to pile up there. All right, now coming over to the storm reports from this storm that just came through. As you can see, we had a total of 44 storm reports on the 11th here, 0 tornado reports on that day. And then coming over to the next day here for the 12th, you can see that we had 0 tornado reports again and 45 total reports, with most of them being damaging winds on the 12th here. So even though we had all those tornado warnings, we really didn't have any reports of tornadoes. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that there were no tornadoes. The NWS is probably still investigating some areas out there. But what it does mean is that nobody during the storm reported a credible enough report to the NWS for them to log it in as a tornado report. But yeah, so that's it for the impacts across the United States from this last storm. So let's come over to here. Start our forecast here. Starting off down here in the southeast. Well, actually, we'll start off with this storm. As you can see, that the storm's still going on over here up in the Great Lakes. See, that snow is still going to be piling up there for Michigan. And look on the western side of Michigan, we're going to have that lake effect snow just kind of continue here for pretty much going from the early morning or going into the early morning hours of the 14th, all the way through the 14th, into the 15th as well. And then that's going to continue for quite a while. It should be pretty light snow, but some areas up here, especially here close to Michigan, over here near Watertown, and then over there, or actually that's Buffalo down there, sorry, and the Watertown up here, we're going to have some lake effect snow, possibly light lake effect snow to moderate lake effect snow for about 4 to 5 days straight, if the models are correct today. So, we'll go over that a little bit more in detail in later forecasts, but our main focus for this one is going to be this snowstorm down in the south central United States and the southeast. And that's going to start, that's really going to start off here with a first little quick shot of snow there for Oklahoma and Kansas going into 12 p.m. on the 14th there, and then pushing this even further. You can see that snow starts to spread into the Tennessee Valley, Mississippi, there for Arkansas. A little bit of icing starting to accumulate there in Dallas at 6 p.m. And then moving this into 3 a.m., you can really start to see that icing starting to show up here on the GFS. Some mixed precip and icing further down to the south there at 3 a.m. on the 15th. And you start to see that snow start to pick up on the northern side. And then 9 a.m. is when the snow really starts to make its appearance here, as we do start to see some heavier snowfall amounts happening over here in Arkansas, making their way into Mississippi, and some lighter snowfall making its way into northern Alabama, Tennessee, and North Carolina there, and then pushing this even further. I mean, look at that. Pretty heavy snowfall still. I mean, this is over like a 6-7 hour period going into 3 p.m. Still have snow falling over here in Mississippi, going into Alabama, Tennessee. Still a little bit there in North Carolina, maybe North Georgia getting in on some snowflakes there as well, starting at 3 p.m. and then pushing this all the way through until the snowstorm snowstorm pretty much exits out of the region here at 12 a.m. there, and then that storm kind of works its way up the east coast. Not really expecting any further impacts, at least according to the GFS, but it really just depends on what happens as this rides the coast. I think that's still a little bit uncertain, so we're not going to really go over it in too much detail. But yeah, so what we're going to be looking at here is the total ice accumulations out there, and starting down with Texas, going into Louisiana, Mississippi there on the southern portions of a lot of these states, kind of central Louisiana there. Maybe, the GFS is saying maybe a tenth of an inch, maybe an isolated spot here, a little bit higher, getting almost to a quarter of an inch in some spots, but mainly hanging around that tenth of an inch range. Not rare, like not very impactful at all, according to the GFS. But the Euro has something different in mind. As you can see, it has a lot more freezing rain out here with a widespread area of quarter of an inch to a half an inch there, and then that moves into Louisiana and Arkansas, southern Arkansas there as well. So definitely got to watch out for this scenario. This is definitely the most worst case scenario here, and this is around the average case scenario. That's what most models are saying. Not a whole lot of freezing rain. So I do think the Euro is a little bit of an outsider here. But moving on to possible snowfall amounts across the southeast, I mean, we could be talking up to 10 inches in some spots. I mean, really starting there from Arkansas, moving into northern Mississippi, going into northern Alabama, southern Tennessee, over here in the Appalachian Mountains, and then that snow can even eventually make it into Virginia, over here near Maryland, Delaware, and South New Jersey there, maybe picking up, in between a dusting to some isolated spots, getting up to 4 inches there, and then everywhere else, around 1 to 2 inches there. So, kind of a widespread but skinny snow event here, with some pretty high amounts according to the GFS. The Euro is pretty much on track with the same thing, maybe a little bit less there in Arkansas and Oklahoma and northern Texas than the GFS. You can see a little bit less there, but I mean, definitely a big large strip of snow. I mean, look at that, even 7 inches popping up in there in northern Alabama. A little bit of an escalation on the models in comparison to the last time we looked at them. And then we have the outlier here, the NAM, which goes a little bit further up to the north. So, the reason why we compare all these different models is so that we can get, a kind of a range of what to expect, because no one model is going to be correct. So that's why we look at multiple models, just to give you somewhat of an expectation. I think NAM is a little bit too far to the north here. I'm leaning towards the Euro and the GFS here, but if you live in northern Alabama or northern Mississippi or even central Arkansas there, and you don't get any snow, guess what? It ended up NAM 12K was correct. All right, and so models are great and everything, but mixing the models with the federally employed National Weather Service's understanding of the microclimates in these regions is really good in trying to formulate that range and what you can expect from snowfall. And this is a pretty much a collage here of what the NWS thinks for these areas. And so we're going to come down here and kind of look at what they're saying a little bit more in detail around Oklahoma City. 2 inches there, Woodward 2 inches, Dodge City, Hutchinson, Wichita in that 2 to 3 inch range, Cape Girardeau in that 2 to 3 range, Hopkinsville, Lexington in the 1 inch range, Richmond kind of in the 1 to 2 inch range, Knoxville in the 2 to 3 inch range, Florence in that 2 to 3 inch range, Huntsville is sitting 0.51 inch, Chattanooga's missing out on it according to this forecast. Tupelo is 3 to 4 inches there, and then as we get into Arkansas here and Tennessee, that's where we're going to start to see some of the bigger snowfall amounts here for like Rogersville, Fayetteville, Fort Smith. That's 4 to 5 inches. Jonesboro could be 5 to 6. Little Rock, 7 to 9 inches is going to be possible around that region. And Pine Bluff, 7 to 8 inches. Memphis, 6 to 7 inches. Jackson, 5 to 6 inches. And something that I find curious here is look at this little line here in between the differences of the forecast. What I'm wondering here is if if everybody over here is using Kuchera and then everyone over here is using the 10-to-1 ratio. There's different ratios for snowfall. They're kind of confusing, so don't hyper focus on that too much. But I do think the Kuchera is the better model for this event personally. And so probably expect a little bit higher amounts over here near Nashville. So maybe, 5 to 6 inches there for Nashville, 5 to 6 inches there for Murfreesboro, with a small chance for even higher than that. Same thing for up here in northern Alabama and Chattanooga. I do think that we could potentially see higher snowfall amounts than this there as well. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but how can these areas handle this amount of snowfall? I mean, do they have snow plows? What are the impacts going to be? Well, luckily we have this cool little map that the NWS also releases here that shows us the impacts expected in accordance to what the areas have in order to prepare for these storms or to handle these storms pretty much. And the big main area here that's highlighted, we have major impacts expected here, which is dangerous or impossible driving conditions, avoid travel if possible, widespread closures, disruptions to infrastructure may occur. So watch out there, Little Rock, Pine Bluff, Conway, Hot Springs, over there in Memphis as well, could have major disruptions in your daily life out there. So definitely, prepare somewhat for this. I mean, it could stick around on that ground for a little while. I mean, it's going to be cold in the backside of this, so it's not like it's going to melt the next day. So it could be multiple days there of some snow on the ground. And then also, over here near Oklahoma, going into Jackson, we have moderate impacts. That means hazardous driving conditions. Use extra caution while driving. Closures and disruption to infrastructures may occur. And then I do expect this little orange region to eventually be expanded over here towards like the Nashville, Murfreesboro. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, most models are indicating a little bit more snowfall over there than what the local NWS is saying in those regions. But I mean, around that, we have minor impacts, which means winter driving conditions. Use caution while driving. That's going to be for Tupelo, Nashville, Murfreesboro, Clarksville to Springfield, Joplin to Woodward, Oklahoma City, Tyler, and Shreveport there. But yeah, dangerous days ahead. So definitely gonna have to keep an eye on this storm as it comes through in your area. And that's not all. We still have big wind impacts to talk about over here in the Ohio Valley, going up into the Northeast. Also, from South and North Dakota, those are still pretty gusty winds over there, 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. And then pushing this into the evening hours here on the 13th, you can see those high winds are really going to start to pick up over here near Pennsylvania and New York, going over into the little microscope we have here that shows us what happens near the ground there. I mean, we're talking 50 to 60 mile per hour winds across this region, so maybe a little bit of an escalation there in the power outages, and then pushing this through into the late night periods here of the 13th. You can see that we are expecting some pretty hefty wind gusts across the coast here, going into New York City, over there near Massachusetts, then on the coast of Maine as well. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be still some impacts to come with these storms as they move off to the east 13th through the 15th there, and then coming back down to here near Texas and the southeast. We're really not expecting too much gusty winds with this storm. It is mainly just going to be that snow and ice threat, maybe getting up into those 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts around there in Oklahoma. And on the 13th in the morning hours, could potentially have some 30 to 40 mile per hour winds over here near Sioux Falls. And if you live anywhere in the higher elevations from the Rockies over to the Sierras, going all the way up the west coast here, I mean, you guys are going to have that potential to see up to 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts on the pretty much the peaks of the mountains and lower in elevation. You're talking about 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. All right, now we're talking temperatures out there across the United States. And man, we got a big deep freeze coming with some Arctic and Canadian air. The Arctic air is going to be sitting around up here, and that Canadian air is going to work its way down into the southeast, And yeah, I mean, we're talking negative degree temperatures, maybe even getting down into the 30s going into 12 a.m. And that's going to be on the 13th. So that's going to be in a couple of hours out there. And then pushing this even further, you can see that cold air starts to eject into the Midwest here, with negative degree temperatures setting up all the way down into Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, going up into Nebraska as well. And I mean, negative 20 still hanging out there going into 9 a.m. on the 14th, and then pushing this in to the 15th here. We can potentially, during the nighttime hours, still have those negative degree temperatures working their way across the country, kind of just setting up here, in the Midwest, in the a little bit there in the Pacific Northwest as well, with warming up a little bit, but still in those negatives out there for a lot of people. And then those temperatures dip down into the teens here, going into the South Central Texas and the Southeast, and those teens make it all the way up to the Northeast as well, with warmer temperatures here near the coast for North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and then over here in the West Coast going into Arizona. A cool little fact is that during the peak heating hours of one of these days, there's going to be like a 140-degree difference in temperatures, from Montana down into southern Florida there. So that's pretty cool fact there. And then now pushing this into the 17th, you can see warms up a little bit up here in the Midwest, going up into the Pacific Northwest there in the northern plains. But then look down here in the Southeast, we're starting to get into those 4-degree temperatures, and with a little bit of a wind chill, we could potentially get into the negatives in some parts here for Mississippi, going into northern Alabama and Tennessee, also Arkansas there as well on the 17th at 12. And then as we push into the 17th at 6 p.m., things warm up a little bit, and those cooler temperatures start to migrate a little bit more to the east into the Great Lakes region. Well, all right, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this forecast, and I will see you guys on the next video.